Well, it's great to be here. It's great to see you, great to be at your school, and see all your enthusiastic faces, and hear all your amazing accents. I think, I don't have an accent, no, I'm just kidding you. So I'm from Australia, and we came over a couple of weeks ago. I live on the east coast in a place called Brisbane, and we got kangaroos there, and we've got wallabies, which are little kangaroos, and saltwater crocodiles, and great big snakes, red-bellied black snakes, which are poisonous. But you know, just like you guys survive in America, and you've got bears and grizzly bears and rattlesnakes and all that sort of thing, you know, most of you survive. Most of us in Australia survive too. So I'm going to talk about dinosaurs and fossils, amazing dinosaurs, the amazing creation. Now fossils, well, what is a fossil? A fossil is a sign of a past life that's found in a rock. So you go to a rock, you dig it up, and you find there's a shell in it, which was once alive. And that comes from the Latin word fossilis, to dig. So it's not very complicated. So anything that's a sign of a life in a rock could be a fish that you find. You find these, I think it's Green River. Could be a leaf that you find, a sign of past life in a rock. Or it could be a footprint. You can't even find the bone, and just find the footprint, and you realise that there was an animal that walked over here. And so dinosaurs, of course, we find dinosaur fossils in rocks, and they're amazing. Dinosaurs are amazing. You get big ones and little ones, and you dig up the bones. Obviously, they're dead. You're not digging up the past. You're digging up in the present. That's why we can see it. That's why we can measure it. But we then want to interpret what happened in the past. And so when secular people dig up these things, and they show it on the television and put it in the newspaper, just like this one's in the museum in Brisbane. So 100 million years ago, this dinosaur was roaming around Australia, and it goes on with this stuff. But definitely the fossils, you can see those are real. Dinosaurs are real, but they did exist. But 100 million years ago, it didn't have a label on it. It says, I'm 100 million years old. That's just somebody's imagination. And because of that, a lot of people think that the Bible can't be true. Because, well, here's a young fella talking to his scripture teacher, and he says, my dad says the Bible isn't true because it doesn't mention dinosaurs. And that's why it's important to be able to understand dinosaurs. The Bible does actually mention dinosaurs, and I'll just give you an explanation. But I'm from Creation Ministries, and we have a website which you might find really helpful called creation.com. That's up there. I think you guys can remember that, can't you? Creation.com. Where do you go to find out stuff about creation and evolution? Creation.com. It's got a topics button there, which you can find out about dinosaurs and rubidium, strontium dating and cosmology and all sorts of things. So if you're talking to your friends and they bring up a topic which you're not familiar with, you can find answers on there about stuff to do with creation and evolution. Plus, you can connect in with a free newsletter. And a lot of young people I know connect in with that, and they get it delivered to them, and it just keeps them up to date, and they learn about this stuff without even trying. Now, do you know much about dinosaurs? Do anybody know what this particular one is called? What's this one called? Anybody know? Yes. It's called the Loch Ness Monster. Not sure. Yeah, go on. What's that? A Lamosaurus? I wouldn't have called it that. It could be. That might be a variety of it. Anybody else going to have a go? Yes. A mosasaur's like that. I guess the bigger variety is a plesiosaur, but a mosasaur is a variety of plesiosaur. So it's a marine extinct reptile. We think it's extinct, unless perhaps the Loch Ness Monster is one of these, and it's not extinct. And then you find these things, who knows what this is, yes? Pterodactyl, a flying reptile. Now, these things aren't really dinosaurs. They sort of appear in the same movies as dinosaurs, but these are actually... Dinosaurs are an extinct reptile, that a certain type of one, with legs. It's a land animal, like this. Who knows what this is? Who's got this, yes? T-Rex, Tyrannosaurus Rex, tyrant, lizard, Tyrannosaurus Rex, king. And so, you know, people sort of say, well, how do we know about these dinosaurs? Were they real? Yeah, we did find out there's evidence of them. Find evidence like of these skeletons here. There's a skeleton of Tyrannosaurus Rex. We find evidence like their teeth there. We find their claws. And we also find things like this, which is fossilized dinosaur dung. And the technical term for it is coprolite. And so we find out a lot about dinosaurs. Plus we find dinosaur footprints and dinosaur skin. And so there's a lot of amazing information about it. But you know, when you find the evidence, we're not digging up the past. We've got evidence in the present. We'd like to know what happened. It'd be really cool to know what happened. And here's this paleontologist looking at this great big dinosaur find, and he's saying this, in my expert opinion, 200 million years ago, these dinosaurs were fighting just before they died. And this one had hold of that one's tail, and you know, and he's going on. And there's the artist drawing the picture, you see. And so the picture looks nothing like the fossils, but that's an impression of it. But you see what he's doing? He's making up a story. Now you see the fossils, but you don't see the story. That's just his imagination. And that's what we see on television. That's what we see in the secular dinosaur textbooks. So dinosaur evidence can be interpreted in different ways. And so you can have secular history, the idea of evolution over millions of years. You look through that lens and you say, 200 million years ago, this dinosaur, and that's the interpretation. You can start with biblical history, which is what really happened in the world, based on eyewitnesses. It's not speculation, eyewitnesses. And you can go to the same evidence, and you can interpret it in that way. And of course, Romans 12 verse 1 says that what we need to do is that we need to have our minds set up so that we're actually looking at the world from the same way that God looks at it. Our mind is transformed. Our mind is renewed by the Word of God. Don't conform to this world, but let your mind be renewed. So I don't know how you guys are going. I just got a little question here. We'll see how you do. What came first? The sun or the land plants? Who thinks the sun came first? Who's for the sun? Few for the sun. Okay. Who thinks the land plants were first? Oh, a few for the land plants. Quite a few. Who doesn't know? Not game to admit. Who doesn't really care? No. Actually, I realised, you know, in Australia, we have compulsory voting. You know, if you don't go and vote in an election, you get fined. So everybody turns up. You can put a big X on your thing if you like, or you can draw a smiley face, but you at least got to turn up and vote. But not here, is it? They've got to try to get you out. Anyway, what came first? According to the secular history, is that there was a great big swirling cloud of dust and gas and in space, and it came together under gravity. Now, nobody really knows how this could possibly happen, but this is a story. And then the sun formed, right? And then the planets formed around it. Have you heard of that? It's called the Nebula Hypothesis. And so the sun formed first, and you got the planet going around, which is the Earth, and it's a molten blob, and there's nothing alive on it. And then as it cools down, whoa, presto, life pops into existence in the ocean. And then it evolves, and eventually you got plants in the ocean. And then the plants evolve out onto the land. So you got land plants millions of years after the sun. But I mean, people who tell you that story, they actually were not there. They didn't see it happen. Nobody had a telescope. Nobody had a thermometer. They're just making up a story. It'd be nice if there was somebody that was there could tell us what happened. And actually, that's what the Bible is, isn't it? The Bible's the history book of the universe. And so if you go to that and you say, okay, what happened at different times? So you think, okay, when did the sun first appear? When was that? When was this? At different days, God did different things. He created in 6 days. And so the sun was created, the big light that rules the day was created on day 4. That's right, day 4, the sun. And the land plants, when were the land plants? When did they first appear? Day 3. So you see those who said the sun was first, which is a traditional way in our culture. You know, it wasn't that way. It was the land plants were first. And people say, well, how can plants survive without the sun? Well, it was only one day. And anyway, there was light. And day 1, God said, let there be light. And we could go into that. And the same thing with dinosaurs. You know, what came first? Birds or dinosaurs? What you see on TV is dinosaurs were first. And dinosaurs evolved into birds. They grew feathers and learned how to jump out of trees and fly. And then the birds were second. But according to the Bible, when did the dinosaurs first appear? Dinosaurs were land animals on day 6. And then the birds were the flying animals. They were on day 5. So the order's quite different again. And that indicates, you just can't stretch the days. If people say, oh, maybe the days were long periods of time, that doesn't solve anything. And so we see dinosaurs were on day 6, yet the Bible doesn't mention dinosaurs. How do we know dinosaurs were on day 6? They're a land animal. The Bible doesn't actually mention kangaroos. Kangaroos are on day 6. Doesn't mention elephants. Elephants are on day 6. So because they're land animals. And so we just connect them with any other animal. Dinosaurs on day 6. And what else was on day 6? People. The first man and the first woman on day 6. So that means people and dinosaurs live together. It does. Or maybe not together. You see, crocodiles and people, we don't live together. We live at the same time. They like it where it's wet and, slimy, and we like it where it's warm, But anyway, so, and then Adam named the animals, and he would have named the dinosaurs. And so this 7 seas of history, this is Bible history. So creation, we understand dinosaurs, and they're amazingly designed, incredible the way they're made. And then there's a corruption, there's falling into sin, and then there's a catastrophe, Noah's flood, and then there's the confusion of the Tower of Babel, and the languages are confused. My relatives were there at that time, actually. And then there was Jesus Christ coming. The Creator came into the world, and he died on the cross to pay the penalty of sin, which came into the world at the time of Adam. So it all fits together, the 7 seas of history. So we can understand dinosaurs from this worldview, the history. So he actually did pretty good on that one about dinosaurs. So let's have another one about the sun and the land plants. Let's have another one about dinosaurs. Have a look at this one. This is T-Rex. Look at the size of his teeth. Look how sharp they are. A whole row at the top, a whole row at the bottom. With teeth like this, what would this dinosaur have been originally? Who thinks that originally he would have been a plant eater with teeth like that? Okay. Who thinks originally he would have been a meat eater? What is that? A meat eater with teeth like that. Who thinks a meat eater? Who thinks he would have been a scavenger? Eating dead animals originally. Who thinks he would have been a plant eater and a meat eater? A bit of a variety in his diet. A steak with salad and that sort of thing. Anyway. But would the Bible say anything about dinosaurs, what they ate originally? It does. The Bible tells us it does. Tell us what they ate. Right at the very beginning, Genesis chapter 1, verse 30. God's talking to the animals, talking to Adam and Eve and telling them what he made them to eat. And he says here, to every beast of the earth, and it says to every bird of the air, everything which has to everything which creeps on the earth in which there is life, I've given them every green herb for food. What did he give them? Green herbs, plants. So they had plants originally. Why was that? Yes? Because the fall hadn't happened. So originally there was no bloodshed. Originally there were no animals killing other animals. Originally Adam and Eve weren't worried that they're going to get eaten by a tiger or a dinosaur. And so it was only after sin came into the world, when Adam and Eve disobeyed the Creator, ate the fruit they were commanded not to eat, that's when there was a curse placed on the earth. And we live in a world that's cursed, that's a fallen world. And that's why Jesus came to die, to save us from that and to redeem the whole world. And but people say, well, look at the teeth on that dinosaur. They're obviously designed for eating meat, but they're obviously sharp. But have a look at the teeth on this animal. Sharp teeth. You know what it is? The skull of? It's what? It's not. Well, it could be a dog. It sort of looks a bit like a dog, but dogs don't have quite that long a teeth, yeah? A what? Tasmanian devil. That's a good guess. That's a really good guess, which is a bit like a dog. I'll tell you what it is. I'll put you out of your misery. It's actually the skull of a fruit bat. A fruit bat. Now, I'm not going to ask what a fruit bat eats. But it eats fruit. It doesn't eat meat. So it's got sharp teeth. It's actually classified as a carnivore, and it eats fruit. And there are a lot of animals with sharp teeth that don't eat meat. There's a panda bear. Remember the panda bear? Sharp teeth, sharp claws, eats bamboo. There's a monkey in South America that's got really sharp teeth, eats fruit. We had an article in our magazine, Creation magazine, of a lion that wouldn't eat meat. It's in a butcher shop, turning its head, doesn't like the stuff. And so you see, just because an animal's got sharp teeth doesn't mean to say that it was a meat eater. And we know that originally there was nothing that caused any hurt or harm in God's creation. As there will be in the future, there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth, and there's going to be a wolf will be good friends with the lamb, and a little child will be able to play with a basket full of snakes, and there'll be nothing that causes any problem, because that's the way God wanted it to be. Now, dinosaurs. We don't see dinosaurs today. Is it because they didn't get on the ark? Well, they would have gone on the ark, don't you reckon? No, he's told to take 2 of every kind of air-breathing, land-dwelling animal on the ark. And you know what? It says that Noah did all that the Lord commanded him. So there would have been dinosaurs on. Who thinks there would have been dinosaurs on the ark? Who thinks? Yeah, I think so too. But there's a bit of a problem. How do you reckon he would have fitted them on? I once asked a little primary, young kids this. The boy put up his hand. He said, "Well, sir, he could have got a big crane, and he cut a hole in the roof and lower him down through the roof." And the little girl said, "Nah, just take a baby one on." But he could just take a young one on. See, dinosaurs hatch out of eggs, and dinosaur eggs, the largest dinosaur egg is only the size of a football. So the largest dinosaur was once little, and so they'd be easily take young ones on. And the ark was big. Here's a model of the ark, and there's a kid standing around looking at it. The ark was some 450 feet long, enormous vessel, and it had 3 decks, and here's the 3 decks in it. First deck, second deck, third deck, window along the top. Got a one door with where you can get on. It's got safety railings on the door, which is pretty good. And it's got dinosaurs going on. And so that's the size of the ark. Easy to be able to fit all the animals on the ark. How many animals? How many dogs? Look at the Great Dane, the Chihuahua, and the sausage dog. How many dogs would have to go on? There. How many? Just 2. It wouldn't be a Great Dane, it wouldn't be a Chihuahua, it would be some sort of mongrel. You know, like a wolf. Wolves are the ones where all the modern dogs have been bred from. The variety as they come from there. And so that's there's a lot of different varieties of dogs. The dog kind. God created the different kinds of animals. He created dog kind. And there's a lot of variety that's developed since then. That's not evolution. That's just design. That's just dogs. It's the way God designed things, so there could be variety. And it's the same with the dinosaurs. You know, there's great variety in the dinosaurs. And so on this particular kind of dinosaurs, the ceratopsia, you've got Triceratops, Leptoceratops, Montanaceratops, all these different ones here. You just have to take 2 on to represent the whole lot, that's all. And you'd easily be able to fit them on. And again, that's not evolution. And you can go into more details about what they've discovered. You know, there's actually a lot less dinosaurs than paleontologists have named. And they mix up the ages of the dinosaurs and just a little bit of variety. They give it a new name when actually it's really the same thing, just like dogs. So the animals went on the ark rose, the waters came up, the ark lifted up, covered the highest mountains under the entire heaven. So it's a global flood. And what's on the ark? It's dinosaurs and all the other animals, 2 of every kind of animal, 7 pairs of some, birds and clean animals like sheep and goats. And here's the highest mountain in the world, Mount Everest, 29,000 feet. And when you go and check it out, this is a picture of it. And when you go and check it out, you find, well, I've not been and checked it out, but there are people who've been up Mount Everest. You could go. I think it's about $100,000 to get a trip up there. And they don't guarantee you come back, but it would be good to get up there and come back. But up the top there are marine sediments, limestones right at the top, marine deposited under the ocean. It's got marine fossils in it. And so Mount Everest was once under the ocean. It's been pushed up. It would have been pushed up towards the end of Noah's flood. And so that's indication, you know, of the effect and the catastrophe of Noah's flood. And you find fossils of dinosaurs. Look at this one, dinosaur leg. This one didn't get on the ark because it's too big. And, well, I don't really know why, but it wouldn't have been quite big to fit on. And in Australia, they find plesiosaurs. Now, a plesiosaur is not a land animal, it's a marine animal, but they still perish. When you have a big flood, lots of marine creatures die because of the mud in the water, the oxygen's used up, all sorts of reasons. And this particular plesiosaur, a farmer in the middle of Australia, or a long way from the coast, found the skull, and he called up the museum, and these are two paleontologists from the museum in Australia, and this thing's lying on its back. It's some 12 feet long, and it's incredibly well preserved. And the paleontologist said, there must have been some catastrophe here. Why a catastrophe? Because if it was just die, it would be eaten by the other animals. There'd be nothing left after a few months. So it had to be buried rapidly. And there it is, right in the middle of Australia. It's where it found, or not really the middle, but it's the middle of our outback there. And even the bones in its flippers are preserved, indicating rapid burial. And not far away, they found the remains of a land animal. Here, this one's called an ankylosaur, an armoured dinosaur. And even details in its skin are preserved, again indicating that it was buried rapidly. This is a model of it. They gave it a name called Minmi. This is a bronze model, and you can see it. So there it is in the middle of Australia. They've got this little museum of the fossils that they find out there. You know, not far away from where the dinosaurs are buried, there were some people digging in a quarry for stone, sandstone. And when they pulled out some sandstone, guess what? They found dinosaur footprints underneath the sandstone. And so the people came out from the museum and they excavated a big area. And eventually they put up a great big tourist tourist place over it, the centre, over these footprints. And you have to drive for some 100 miles in the middle of nowhere. There's no service stations, there's no McDonald's or anything like that out there. And to get it, and you have to make sure you've got plenty of water to do the journey. And you go inside and you find there's a guy there which will talk about these dinosaur footprints, and you can have a look at them. It's quite amazing how they're preserved. But you've got lots of dinosaur footprints in your country, up in the mountains, where dinosaurs have been walking around, and indicates that they were still alive at that time. And the interesting thing is there's a guy who did some research on these just recently. And as he looked at the footprints, he thought, you know, that's not a full dinosaur foot. That's only the toes. So this thing was walking on tiptoes. Now, he didn't suggest that he was a ballerina or anything like that. But what he did suggest that it was probably in water, and the water was supporting its weight. And it was, you know, walking on tiptoes to try to get through the water. And he sent a paper to a scientific journal. It was published, and he's drawn a drawing of it, of this dinosaur walking on its toes across the water, across this quarry. And you know what? When you think about Noah's flood, you think, wow, that's really fantastic. But it's really no surprise when you think about Noah's flood and the water's coming up and animals being overwhelmed, and there's some evidence of it. You know, there's a lady that's really become famous because of her work on dinosaurs. So who knows? Some of you guys could become famous on the things that you get into in the future. I'm sure that some of you will. But this lady's name is Mary Schweitzer, and she discovered a dinosaur bone, or one of the ones she had. She noticed it had an unusual smell about it, like it wasn't properly fossilised. And so she took a little part of it and looked at it under the microscope, and she discovered, or concluded, that it actually still had red blood cells in it. I don't know if you've heard of this, but this is in a dinosaur bone, and here's the dark red colour of these blood cells. And she published a paper, and everybody said that she was crazy, that she did it wrong, and that there couldn't be blood cells and all that. And she was interviewed a lot by different people and the media. And the Museum of the Rockies is where she's at, and she said it was exactly like looking at a slice of modern bone. And she says, but of course I couldn't believe it. I said to the lab technicians, the bones, after all, are 65 million years old. How can blood cells survive that long? So you see what she's doing? You know, we're talking about worldview. She really believes in her mind that the world is millions of years old. And so the question is, these blood cells show the world is young? No. How can they survive that long? And the people that didn't like what she did, they believed the world was millions of years old, and they said they didn't survive because they're not blood cells. Well, she found some more stuff about 10 years later, In a dinosaur bone, she found soft tissue which stretched and more blood cells. And so nobody really says that they're not blood cells anymore, but they used to. But they basically say, oh, there must be some mechanism that preserves these things that we don't know about. And so that's the way worldviews work. You see, as people who believe the Bible, who look at the world through a Bible lens, we say, well, that is amazing, but it's not surprising because the Noah's flood was 4,500 years ago. And so these animals which were perished, it's quite easy to envisage how that blood cells could survive for thousands of years. That's a bit of a stretch, but still, that's nothing like surviving for millions of years. And so what we find is that the evidence of the dinosaurs, it's amazing how it confirms and points to the Bible. Now, I had a group here before and I talked about radioactive dating and I talked about these amazing machines which measure the chemicals in rocks and are used for radioactive dating. And I just made the point, this was an argon mass spectrometer, sounds a big name, but they're very amazing machines. They're very accurate, they're very precise, they're high technology, but they only measure argon. They don't measure dates. They don't measure the age. They measure argon. And so the date is a calculation that the geologist does based on assumptions about what happened in the past when he wasn't there, didn't see it. And so it's just like this. They say, oh, look, it's just like an hourglass. You get this hourglass and you've got the radioactive decay. It's a bit like that, where you've got the potassium decaying into argon, right? And so you just read the hourglass. That's what we're measuring. Just measure the hourglass and you got the date. Well, no, it's not like that, because you don't know what was the starting amount. That's the problem. If you read the glass, what was in it at the beginning? You don't know. And that's a guess. And so the geologists have to guess that. And then, it's unlike an hourglass, a rock, is porous, often porous, and it can gain things and lose things because of groundwater, and can gain things and lose things there because of various reasons. And also the rate. Who knows that the rate's always been the same? And so you see, geologists, although they do the calculation, although they do accurate measurements and do a calculation, it's all based on assumptions, and you really can't know for sure if the assumptions are true. Like here, there's a volcanic rock. The guy collected this volcanic rock and he sent a sample of it off, crushed it off, sent it off to the dating lab, did it by potassium argon, which is basically the same as argon, and the whole rock came up with an age of 350,000 years. That's what came back. So it sounds good, doesn't it? But what he did also is he crushed the rock and he collected one of the little coloured minerals out of it, and he sent this sample of minerals off to the lab, and that came back with an age of 900,000 years. Same rock. And then he picked another mineral, a black pyroxene mineral, and that came back with an age of 2,800,000 years. So what's the age of the rock? And this is what geologists encounter all the time when they send things off to the laboratory. The numbers come back, they look at them, and they wonder, what does that mean? So what does that mean? And the question is, well, what age should it be? That's what geologists, what age should it be? And so if you know what the age is, you can then explain what these numbers mean. But if you don't know what the age is, you sort of think, okay, which is the right number? But in this case, this is a rock which came from just down the road at Mount St. Helens, okay, looking out across Spirit Lake, and it erupted 10 years before, so it was only 10 years of age. And so the dating method is trying to figure out how long it's been since the lava has solidified and become, like a closed system. And 350,000 years, no, it was only 10 years ago. And so see, if it doesn't work for rocks where you know the age, why would you trust it for rocks where you don't know the age? There is a way of knowing the age of things, and a very accurate way, and it's called the historical method. And that's how, for example, we know what happened on the 4th of July 1776, the Declaration of Independence. That was based on eyewitnesses. And it's the same with the Bible. The Bible is an eyewitness account. And it goes right back to Adam, who's the first man that lived. If you ever want to know what he looks like, there, have a look. That's it. That's him. It's actually a cartoon we did of him. And it's got the genealogies. You're familiar with those in Genesis? It's easy to read, and you get a calculator. You can work out how long it was from Adam to Noah and how long to the flood. And then from Noah to Abraham. You can figure that out, and his son Isaac, and then to David. And he comes down through this line here to Mary, the mother of Jesus, this line here to Joseph, the husband of Mary. And you can figure out that the world is about 6,000 years old. And so it's pretty simple to be able to figure that out. Now, people say, well, I'll just move on quick, but if the people sort of think, well, if there were dinosaurs, if there were dinosaurs that existed with people, why don't we hear about them? You know, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Dinosaurs came off, people came off. But you know what? We don't hear about dinosaurs and people together a lot about it, or we don't usually hear about it. But dinosaurs is a name that was invented by a guy in England. He was in the British Museum. His name is Richard Owen, and he had these dinosaur bones, and he invented the name. But before that, people didn't call them dinosaurs. If they saw a big dragon, or a big reptile, they called them dragons. So we think dinosaurs are actually dragons in history. And there's lots of examples of that. There's the flag of Wales, got a dragon on it. And there's lots of stories from Wales about the dragon. And the Bible actually I could give other examples of this, and we got articles on creation.com, examples of dinosaur, and there's different places in England and in Cambodia and that. But the Bible talks about an animal. It's a fascinating animal, and it's in the book of Job. And the animal, it says, God is talking to Job, and he says about this animal, he says, Job, have a look at Behemoth, which I made along with you. So, and then he describes him. It feeds on grass like an ox. What strength is in his loins, what power is in the muscles of his belly. His tail moves like a cedar. His sinews and thighs are close knit. His bones are like tubes of bronze, his limbs are like rods of iron. He ranks first among the works of God. And I once asked a class of kids this, and one little boy said, I said, what do you think this could be? And he said, a blue whale. I thought, oh, where'd you get that from? He said, the blue whale is the biggest animal. And I thought, oh, I get it. He ranks first among the works of God. But you see, a blue whale doesn't eat grass like an ox. It doesn't have limbs like rods of iron. In some Bibles they say it could be an elephant. Well, an elephant's got big limbs, it does eat grass. But it doesn't really fit because of the tail. It's got a tail, moves like a cedar. And here's a picture of a cedar log with my wife. And this is in Australia, great big tail. So you can figure out what this thing is like. Let's start with do a bit of an evidence. You start with the tail, and you say, well, does it really fit with one of these? Not really. Does it fit with one of these? Hippopotamus. They say it could be a hippopotamus. No, not really. Does it fit with one of these? Well, actually, it doesn't fit too bad, does it? So we think that Job is talking about, or they're in that book about a dinosaur. And so what happened to it? Who knows what happened to the dinosaurs? But if you think of any animal, animals are endangered, they're threatened, there's all sorts of climate change and people hunt them and that. So maybe dinosaurs were hunted out to extinction. Or maybe they're not extinct. Who knows? That would be an amazing find. I mean, people are finding animals which were thought to be extinct, which are not. And this is a coelacanth fish, thought to be extinct for millions of years. That's what they thought. And then a lady discovered one not alive, that the fishermen had brought up in Africa. And subsequently, people have been able to photograph them under the water. They've found others of them near Indonesia. And so you can find lots and lots of amazing evidences and understand. So you see, dinosaurs, amazing creatures. And people say, the Bible doesn't mention dinosaurs. Yes, it does. Behemoth, we think, is a dinosaur. But if you think of a dinosaur like any other animal, they're easy to understand. And so that's what we talk about. This is a guy here. He says, Michael, he says, I encountered, did I put this up? I think I might have done it for the first class. I encountered evolution in my youth. This was a very big stumbling block to my belief in the Bible during my search for God. I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Saviour at 47 and am very grateful to CMI who opened the mind. So a bit of information can really help us understand the world and realise that the Bible is to be trusted. And of course, I've already mentioned the website creation.com where you can get information. And there is a book, here it is, the Answers book, Creation Answers book. If you'd like a book that explains lots and lots of stuff like carbon dating and who did Cain and Abel, who did Cain marry, where did he get his wife from, if there was just one man and one woman at the beginning, and where did all the water come from the flood, and lots of stuff like this, genetics and evolution and natural selection. So this book here is a book that you'll find helpful. $5, we're doing it for $5 today because of students, you know, so it's normally about $14, I think. So thank you very much for the privilege of sharing with you. The bell hasn't gone off yet, has it? But it's about to. It's about to. Look, I just want to show this one thing. This Noah's Ark, the door is open, anybody could go on the ark and be saved from the flood. And it's like a picture of salvation. Today, Jesus Christ is our salvation. The door is open, anybody can go on, but you know, there came a day when the door was shut. And Jesus said, I am the door. If any man enter in, he shall be saved. And you know, I came to Christ when I was in my early teens, and that's been a great thing. And I just can see here lots of young people who are going to grow up and serve the Lord in amazing ways, particularly with the training that you're getting. So thanks very much for the privilege of coming from Australia and seeing you guys. All the best. Do you have students here that ask questions? Oh, here's one. Good on you. I take that back. They are going to ask, yeah.
Oh, you had a discussion about...
Yes?
So
Okay, there's a lot of things like that. There's parasites, there's some really horrible things that can get into our intestines and get into our blood. And that's a consequence of the fall. And so sometimes parasites, they become parasites because there's some genetic mutation, which means they can't survive on their own. And so that's one of the features. There's three main sort of ways you can explain these things. One is the fact that there's been some change happen after the fall. Like the Bible talks about the ground's going to bring forth thorns and thistles. And so that's a genetic modification of a leaf is a thorn. So it seems like there were genetic changes which occurred as a consequence of the fall. Another one is that God might have used his foreknowledge to be able to provide people with camouflage, provide animals with camouflage. So it might have been attractive, but it's also used as camouflage in anticipation of the fall. And another one is that there could be some, just some sort of natural changes which occur as a result of mutations and natural selection, is that some creatures, which is, this is a downhill method, and that can result in animals becoming carnivorous and that sort of thing. So I hope that's answered it. Yep. Anyone else? The bell hasn't got... Somebody's forgot to turn the bell, yeah? Leviathan, we don't know of any animal like that today, but there's one book that one of our guys wrote that indicates that it could be a very, very large crocodile. We found remains of it in Egypt. What's the other one you talked about? I don't know that one, I'm sorry. Okay. But they are either extinct or they are alive, or there may be animals which are still alive. Normally, if they're still alive, they're easy to identify. But it's the extinct ones which are hard to identify with what's in the Bible, yeah. Yes? Megalodon, yeah? Why do I think they went extinct? Why did these big predators go extinct? One thing could be humans. That could be a thing which because they're so big, because humans, particularly big young men, like to become famous for killing these big things. They go game hunting and that sort of thing. So humans could play a big role, a role in making them go extinct. There's quite a bit of debate. There's some very large animals in Australia which have gone extinct, and there's a debate over whether it was some sort of change in the climate, a natural process, or whether it was arrival of the humans. And I don't think that's been resolved, really. It's still tossed one way or the other. Yes? Any other question? You all enjoying your school? You all doing your work? That's good. Have you done your homework? That's right. Okay, thank you very much for the privilege.